Just another good intention gone awry. Without motivation, kiss it all goodbye. They like to fetter everybody's hopes and dreams. Taking what I work for is tyranny. Hey, you, keep your hands off my stuff. I work hard every day, and it don't seem enough. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter from deep in the bowels of our underground lair, where we had to testify against the FBI.
Did we?
And
you know where I told them?
And they're knocking down your door right now.
You know where I told them to put it?
Yeah, I do, and that's why they're knocking down your door right now, buddy.
Well, I'm not home, so it's okay. They get my dog barking.
That's all right. That's all right.
Okay, that's the Beach Boys, right?
Yes.
Some good intentions, right? Is that what you say? Good intentions?
Oh, that's good vibrations.
Oh, well, same difference. I got the good part right. That's half a point.
Oh, my word.
I have no idea. I have no clue. Was I supposed to get this one? This
No.
isn't like
It was not an
the
easy
crash
one.
test dummies or something.
It's one that just kind of, with the topic today, it just kind of popped in my head. I'm like, hey, I think there's a song by that name.
Really?
So, yes.
It just popped in your head.
It did.
Often you picking a song is what delays us till midnight. And then you pick what the Vanilla Ice or
I don't think I've
Snow
ever picked Vanilla
or
Ice
like
or
that.
Snow.
Well, lay it on us. Who the hell is it?
Keep Your Hands Off My Stuff by a band called Love War.
Oh no, that's keep your hands to yourself, right? So if I'd have said that'd have been 2/3 of a point.
Well,
That's the Georgia Peaches or something.
Georgia Satellites.
Right. Okay,
yeah.
I got Georgia right.
Well,
I'm
still
doing
the
good
wrong-
this
Still
week.
the wrong song.
Yeah, but I'm still doing good.
well.
I mean, by my scoring system, I'm on that curve. I'm on that Minneapolis curve.
Right.
They still can't pass. Here, we'll give you half the right answers. See if you pass that.
In Minneapolis, where it's pass or fail, and you get to do it again if you fail.
It's
still
fail until you pass. I got to tell you something, Jay.
Yeah.
Speaking of schools, okay, this pissed
Yes.
me off last week to no end. Of course, we had the great 49-inch snowstorm that we were going to get. Starting at this time, we didn't get it till 5 in the afternoon, and then it was out of there at 7 in the morning. And the weatherman, of course, was wrong. Weatherman couldn't be. If the weatherman said there's everything is possible. Tomorrow it could be partly cloudy, partly snowy, partly rainy, partly sunny. He'd still be wrong.
Yes.
That's the weather person, okay? And I hate saying that because, I know they're doing a job, but I mean, come on, if I was wrong as they were, imagine if your pilot was as wrong as the
Yeah.
weatherman.
We're now descending on Las Vegas. Oh, I'm trying to go to Orlando.
What's that mountain doing right there? Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
This is what I love about public school.
Yes.
Oh no, well, I don't love very much about it, but
I don't like anything about it.
So Monday last week,
Yes.
it was President's Day. So of course the kids were out of school. Fine,
Yep.
all right, whatever.
Yeah.
They go to school on Tuesday. Wednesday, the threat of snow cancels the day. I can tell you, I work outside.
Yeah.
It was 5 p.m. before a snowflake came.
Oh, yes.
The school was canceled. Yet that night, the girls' high school hockey tournament was going on as scheduled over at the XL Energy Center. Now, you tell me, how about that for priorities? Hey, you can't cancel the girls' hockey tournament,
Yeah.
but the kids don't have to go to school. They can go play sports. Somebody drove from War Road or from Duluth or from wherever. So a hockey tournament goes on. It's safe enough to do that. Safe enough to drive from War Road to the Twin Cities, but it's not safe enough for your snot-nosed brat to walk 3 blocks to school.
You know what?
Or take the bus.
I've adopted a different attitude over the past number of years. Any day that public school is canceled is a good day. Any day that the
Not
kids
quite with you on that,
are
but-
not in front of those Marxist brainwashing. Cancel it. Cancel it all. Cancel it all.
Well, we want to know why kids aren't learning. I mean,
Well, they're not learning when they're in school either.
well, they got a chance anyhow. I mean,
You know, how learning about how to have intimate relations with someone of the same sex.
is it
or
that bad? Is it really
a-
that bad?
Dress like a cat and ask for a litter box. It's bad.
Well, I don't know.
It's bad.
I'm just like, why
They take
is
away
it?
all the gifted classes.
Well, of course, we can't let people achieve. That's not fair.
Yeah, well.
But I just don't understand. Why isn't nobody pointed that out other than me? I saw nobody make this point other than me.
I don't know.
The news, oh, hey, no school. They got the little ticker like Sports
Yeah.
Center down there.
Yeah.
The school's gone. Oh, by the way, here are the highlights from the girls' high school hockey tournament. Like, really? It does not dawn on you how stupid that is?
Yes.
But I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I just think back and look. There's legitimate reasons to cancel school in weather. It does happen. Okay, but we've gotten to a point now where if the forecast calls for frost in the morning,
Yes.
school is questionable for the next day.
Yes.
I mean,
That's
and what it does
bad.
to parents and everybody. I mean, it's just I don't know how parents do it now. How do you do it?
Yeah.
I don't get it because there are days I so regret not having children. There's so days I'm so happy I don't.
Yeah.
Because I would be that school board. They would. My face would be like on a wanted poster because I would just be all over these people all the time.
Your nemesis is on the school board now, and that
not
would
my
work out
nemesis.
really great.
Bother me. I mean, to be honest with you,
It would be like
it's pretty bad on a
Rumble
school.
in the Jungle too.
It's pretty bad on the school board when Renee makes sense. Okay, that's where it gets pretty bad.
I know.
So
That's
look, they deserve her. I'm okay with it.
yeah.
They deserve her.
My kid's not in the district anymore, so I guess whatever.
I know you wrote her in, so I mean,
No,
here's
I
the thing.
actually didn't.
I can't say on the air what I wrote in. It's the words are at the end of a dirty joke I heard, so I'm not going to say. But yeah, I mean, just the priorities of public education. And you know, it's sad. I'll tell you what's sad about it. There was a time when public education was great in this country. There was a time when there wasn't an agenda behind it. There was a time when I mean, I'm going to go back to my childhood when, of course, I know I never did homework, but my elementary school and my church, okay, when I was growing up, First Lutheran Church over on 62nd there, and Lincoln Elementary, which is 62nd. It's not there anymore. It's a charter school or something now.
Yeah.
They were like the focal points of my neighborhood. You know, it was. You knew everybody. Everybody went to my church. It felt like.
Yeah.
You know, everybody. My parents knew everybody's. It was just It was such a innocent time. I mean, I know people use that term a lot, but I mean,
right.
just that neighborhood school was just something special, and you know, it's just another thing we've lost.
Yeah.
I don't know how you go back. I don't know how you turn it back. I don't know what you do. So,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know the elementary school I grew up in, Bayview Elementary, was a neighborhood school, and I believe it still is. But yeah, it's, I don't know. There's, I think, you know, an effort. Even back when I was in school, you know, it was like we had Bayview, and then we had some of the outlying and the really rural areas of the Proctor area, Munger, Caribou Lake, Pike Lake, you know,
and a lot of northerns in that lake.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then there was a Catholic school in town too, and so. But it was the elementary schools. You had a junior high. You had the high school, the junior high, intermediate school at some point. So instead of the elementaries being, well, I take that back. Most of the elementaries were still K through 6, but the one in town that I went to was actually K through 4, and then they sent us to intermediate school for 5 and 6. There used to be a Summit Elementary. They had gotten rid of that. That's what became the new high school. So they've been doing this for forever.
Well, you know what started it was this idea that we're going to we need minorities in these schools. We can't have white schools. We can't have black schools. We have to get those chocolate chips in that.
That's not what
shake.
started it in Proctor because
No,
about 99% of the people were white.
But you got to screw with that. You can't leave it as is. And when you're busing kids 20 miles from their home, there's no chance for parent involvement. There's no chance for extracurricular activities for that kid. There's no kid doesn't live with the people that he goes. I mean, I don't know. There's pros and cons to all of that. But I know that by the time my sister got into Cooper. So this would be the late 90s. That's when they started busing the kids in from Minneapolis. And it became this social effort. It had nothing to do with achievement in education. It had to do with putting minority faces in white schools.
Yeah.
That suddenly became the priority. And just to show how off the thinking is it's worse than ever now, 25 years later. But, I mean, it was head-scratching at the time that was, the thinking, but it just continuously goes downhill.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
But, hey, hockey tournament, priority over learning. Just remember that when they ask for more money. Remember that when that referendum comes.
Yeah.
So that got me hot under the girdle. I don't know why, but it did. It got me hot under the girdle last week. I was pretty upset about it. I'm just like, really? Come on. I mean, you're gonna have a hockey tournament and you're not going to go to school that day. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, it's just nuts. And I wonder too. Were the other activities canceled that day? I mean,
well, I'm sure all the school activities were canceled. Yeah. Anytime a school closes its doors, that usually means that the school activities are closed. But since this is, what would you call it, where you're bringing a number of schools together, it falls under a different banner. So
Minnesota High School League is who it
Yes, that is what that is called. Yes, I was looking for like a general term, but yes, that is the...
Whatever
the governing authority over that.
They suck too.
Yeah.
They all stink. You stink.
That's true. It's true.
Speaking of stink.
Yes.
Okay, speaking of things that just reek. Jay, I love our topic today because I love it when we talk a little history and then talk about end the show with like a to-do list.
Yeah.
Because we're community solutions here. Meaning we don't just whine and cry. We do that for 90% of the show, but we do at the end offer some helpful suggestions.
I don't think what we do is whine and cry. I would not.
Okay, well,
I would not characterize it that way. I mean, we tell the truth and we give news and we give opinions. There's just a lot of really bad things happening right now, and you can't get around that. You can't whitewash something that is naturally just garbage.
You do what I do. You join them.
Yeah, that's not
I've
what
joined
you do.
them. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm behind your back. I've joined them.
Right.
Soros, I got him on speed dial. You want to see my phone? Here, he's on
My
speed
word.
dial. Yeah, it says a-hole right there. And that's him. Jay, by the way, so just to let everybody, we're talking a little eminent domain today. And this is a subject we've touched on over the years. We've mentioned it here and there. I don't know that we've done a whole podcast on it.
No.
If we have, we haven't really touched on some of the things we're going to touch on. So it's kind of, when you do 279 shows and you realize a topic like eminent domain, we've talked enough about police and about, all that kind of stuff. And it's all newsworthy. I mean, it's all important. And, by the way, before we get into this, I got a question I want to ask the Golden Valley City Council. Because I listened back to that show we did a month or so ago on how they budget for 30 officers and have like 9.
Yeah.
What happens to the money that was allocated for those officers the previous year? What happened to that money?
It's a great question because they have to budget for having a full force, right?
Well, yeah, because what if you get 20 applicants next week? I mean, if the money's not there, you can't hire anybody.
True.
So what happens if you don't hire anybody? Where did that money go? I guarantee you the residents of Golden Valley didn't get a check in the mail.
Well, that's true. What did they spend it on?
Put it in the old government savings account, or was it spent on some equity, gay pride picnic or something like that?
Or did they leave it in the account and then cut that out of the budget for the next year?
No, because then their baseline would go down,
Right,
and it would. You know how government works. They
can't have that.
They can't do that because then they don't do zero-based budgeting.
Right.
So. I just am curious what happened to all that money that you were supposed to spend on police and didn't.
Question.
The things that I think, therefore I am.
Yes.
That's the thing right there. So think, a month or two after we do a show, I come up with a critical question about it.
Yeah.
But I was like yelling at my phone like, come on, Richter, ask the obvious question. Where's the money? Of course I didn't do it. Now I do it.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah. What do you call that we're on there, that thing? That green thing?
Spotify?
Yeah.
That thing?
That app thing.
Yeah.
This thing. See down in the corner?
Yep.
That's Spotify.
Yes.
Okay. So, I was listening on Spotify and to that show, whatever show that was, doesn't matter, and did not ask the critical question. I want Shep Harris's ass in here. I want somebody in here to explain to us. They owe the citizens of Golden Valley answers as to what happened to that dough that was put aside for the police department and never spent. I mean, was it all spent on handcuffs and tasers, or I tell you, probably went to the gay pride picnic or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know.
Well,
maybe you can go to pay for that community center that they built.
Yes.
Because I'm sure they didn't have the cash for it, of course. So I'm sure they borrowed it.
Shep does know how to get a hold of us, so that is an open invitation to come on the show if you'd like.
He wants to come on. I'm fine with it. Well, I won't hold my breath because I'd die before he'd come on. But I think it's a noteworthy question. How about our local media there, Channel 12? How about you ask that?
Yeah.
You write articles on it, but you don't do any investigative journalism into where the money goes exactly. Maybe I should write another letter to the editor.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I don't live in Golden Valley, but maybe I should just propose the question. You could say the same thing about Minneapolis too. I mean, their charter spells out X amount of police officers. Well, if they don't have them, where's the money go?
Right.
The council, I mean, as dim-witted as they are, they allocated the money.
Yeah.
I hate the police, but they gave everybody a raise. So, all right.
Yeah.
Off this,
Okay,
Jay.
okay.
On to eminent domain. Jay,
Yeah.
eminent domain, the government taking your land. We have protections against that in our Fifth Amendment of how government, private property is a protected right in this country and has to be. You have nothing if you have no private property rights. But eminent domain has been, I don't think abused is the right word. I need a harsher word than that. Over the years, I just think that the definition of eminent domain, as well as the ways to get around it, have become a big issue when it comes to like redevelopment.
Oh, absolutely.
And so eminent domain in the Fifth Amendment, let me get it up here. Where the hell do I had it up here? I know this is riveting radio here. It's just hold on a second. Private property rights here. The three requirements. Now, government does have. This is what the Fifth Amendment says, that private property shall be taken for public use without just compensation. There's three. So this is the government taking land privately owned. Okay. And this is what the Constitution says about it. The property acquired must be maintained for a public use. They must pay just compensation, and no person should be deprived of his or her property without due process of law.
Huh.
Those are the three principles.
Yes.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but that sounds pretty darn straightforward. I think it's pretty obvious what, quote, a public use is. To me, I think that's fairly obvious.
Yes.
However, over the years, it has not become very obvious. I think just compensation is fairly obvious.
Yeah, I think
you
so
don't
too.
bully people out of their homes. You
Yep.
don't, you don't intimidate them. You don't, and obviously we all know, and so on and so forth. I mean, it is not. I don't think this is rocket science. Why has this become rocket science? Because it has.
Everything has, though, because government always looks for a way to get around the laws that they put into place. If they can't do it, they get corporations to go around it because they're not beholden to the Constitution. If they put a cap on taxes into place, they find different taxes to be able to get around that tax limit, right?
It's kind of like
we all know this. It's
kind of like spilling a beer. It just goes everywhere. It just goes on the chair and on the table and on the TV, and you just can't stop it.
Right.
But I mean, I come back to this. I come back to, and you come back to the Kelo case that everybody talks about, Kelo versus New London. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I want to understand how far off we've gone. Now, before we get to that, a public use.
Yeah.
Now there was a grapevine understanding for a long, long time what a public use meant.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been a railroad.
Yeah.
In earlier days. That could have been a highway.
Yeah. And eminent domain was used a ton in the building of the railroads, in the building of the freeways.
Yeah, some of that
Yeah.
land wasn't privately owned. But
Right,
yeah, that's
right,
true.
right.
That the government did own a lot of that land. But yes, that's true. It was used, and the term public use, and it was for a public use.
Yeah.
It was to get goods and services to certain places. It was to travel. Everybody could use it. Everybody benefited from it because you want to go to the grocery store. Okay, well, how do the groceries get there? How do they get from the farms?
Right.
And it made sense. Doesn't mean every project was good. Doesn't mean everything was just. But there was an understanding of what that meant. Mm-hmm. And I would throw schools, public hospitals, maybe you could also argue were tossed in there as well. I know schools were also. What it's morphed into? Do you know the story of Vern Gagne?
Some of it, obviously,
But how he lost his property in Minnetonka?
No,
Okay.
I don't.
Okay, the Minnetonka, I have to look this up. Now, when the AWA wrestling was kind of in its downfall in, say, the late 80s,
Right.
it was a great, strong company for a long, long time.
But when you were having matches like Sergeant Slaughter against Abdullah the Butcher,
Well, that wasn't that bad.
that wasn't
I would
that
have
bad.
watched that.
that was all right. They had some other issues, but
They had some bad stuff. I'm trying to find it, but Vern owned a very, very large property along Lake Minnetonka. It was probably several $1 million he probably owned. Now, this is in the 80s.
yeah.
Okay. And
They were famously from Mound.
the Gagnes, yes,
Yes.
originally.
Yeah.
I want to get this right, so let me just look up something here. But when the AWA started going down, Vern sold some of his land to keep the company afloat.
Yeah.
Here it is right here. He owned a ton of and the government wanted it to create the Lake Minnetonka Regional Park.
Oh, goodness.
And Gagne fought and fought and fought. They took him to court, and eventually he lost his case. They took his property. He had horses. He had all sorts of things. And it was along Lake Minnetonka. And he was basically forced to, they offered him like 30% of what it was worth.
Are you saying Hennepin County did this? Or,
I don't know. Lake Minnetonka, it's part of the Three Rivers Park
so it would
system.
be Hennepin County then.
They would be part of it, but of course, the Three Rivers Park system is its own entity. But they wanted to run some trail or something through there, and so they took Vern to court, and they took all of his land for like 30% of what it was worth.
Wow.
It's one of the biggest eminent domain cases in the history of Minnesota. So that was how he ended up in bankruptcy court for Gagne. I mean, they bankrupted him, literally.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so you see how far it's... I don't know that a regional park or a trail is what's meant by public use. I mean, if that's the case, I could tear down downtown Minneapolis and make a sidewalk. I mean, that's a fairly absurd reasoning for that. So, but yeah, that's how crazy it got. But yeah, he lost that case, and that's part of how he ended up going down. So, I mean, that's how it went. But the Kelo case was a case, the city of New London in Connecticut, I think.
Yes.
Was basically wanting to tear down land and make more valuable land.
Yes.
To enhance their tax base. They were pretty naked about it.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't hide, we don't like these homes. We want to kick everybody out, tear them all down, and build the $500,000 mansions that they can tax the hell out of.
Yeah.
And they won their case in the Supreme Court. A 5-4 decision. Now, this is back in 2005, Jay. So I want you to tell me the 5 justices that voted for it without looking it up.
Yeah.
And the 5 that voted against it.
2005.
Right.
So Breyer would have voted for it.
Breyer was one of them.
Ginsburg would have voted for it.
Ginsburg voted for it.
Oh, goodness. Who else was on that at the time? Who voted against it would have been...
Okay, who voted against it?
Alito, Clarence Thomas.
Alito wasn't there.
What? Alito wasn't there yet? He was... When was... He was shortly after that.
2006.
Wow, come on. Give me a break. Okay, so who voted... this is one where... I would assume Kennedy voted for it.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was the downfall right there. And it was whoever came before Sotomayor and whoever came before...
okay. All right.
What's her name?
Elena Kagan.
Elena Kagan.
The person who wrote the majority opinion...
Clarence Thomas would have voted no.
He voted no. John Paul Stevens voted...
Yep.
He was the majority.
Oh, Stevens. Yeah.
Along with Anthony Kennedy, David Souter,
Yeah.
Ruth Ginsburg, and Stephen Breyer. The dissents were Sandra Day O'Connor, Chief Justice Rehnquist, who passed away not long after that. Yeah, Roberts wasn't there either.
Right.
Thomas and Scalia. They were the four that...
yeah.
So
no, Roberts, that was one of W's great additions.
Well, he's been good on some stuff.
Not that.
He didn't vote for this one, so he wasn't there.
That's true.
I think Rehnquist died a few months after this, actually.
Right.
So it was, Stevens, Kennedy, Souter, Ginsburg, and Breyer. Yeah. Justice Kennedy wrote a concurring opinion as well about the economic developments of taking. It's amazing how they write this. Yeah. That the idea that government policy need only bear a rationale relation to a legitimate government purpose into a fact-based test. Well, if that's the case, then the government can argue anything they do is okay.
Yep.
I mean, what are the limits? Remember, you're supposed to put out limits on what government can do.
Mm-hmm. The Constitution is a charter of negative liberties, not positive liberties.
I mean, here's part of the set. I'm not sure who wrote this, but any property may now be taken for the benefit of another property. But the fallout of this decision will not be random. The beneficiaries are likely to be those citizens with disproportionate influence and power in the political process, including large corporations and development firms. 100% right.
Yeah.
That's who totally stands to benefit.
Yep.
Sandra Day O'Connor went further, arguing that any distinction between private and public use of property is effectively deleted. And they all wrote something about it. But anyway, the decision provoked a lot of states to come in and make laws limiting eminent domain.
Yeah.
Minnesota actually was one of them. Governor Pawlenty proposed actually a much stronger law than was passed in his State of the State in 2006. And in May of 2006, Minnesota passed a law putting some limits. I would argue putting some limits
Right.
on them. It went nowhere near as far as the governor had requested. However, I will confess it was better than what was there previous to that. The Institute for Justice, I don't know who they are. I have no idea who they are. Do you know who they are? Minnesota Institute for Justice?
No.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but this is where I get some of the information here on their website, ij.org. They have kind of a summary there of the Kelo v. New London decision and Minnesota's response to it, which was fairly flawed. They actually give Minnesota a decent grade on this law. I would not give them that high grade. So maybe they say Minnesota gets a B rating for eminent domain laws here. And I would beg to differ, but that's just me. And I'm going to read from them just real quick. In response to Kelo versus New London, a diverse group, coalition of civil rights group, religious leaders, trade associations, concerned citizens, and officials from Minnesota's major political parties worked together to reform the state's eminent domain laws. Now, that's not altogether false.
Right.
However, what this doesn't mention is who worked against it. League of Minnesota Cities was all for eminent domain.
Yeah.
You know, all the big groups like that. The Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities worked against this bill. Several liberty groups worked against this bill, believe it or not.
Yes.
Arguing local control, which I think is a dubious rationale when it comes to the Constitution. I mean, we're going to take a constitutional principle, but it's subject to local review.
No.
Absurd.
That is absurd.
Sorry, ridiculous. Yeah. The law, which was Senate File 2750, protects homes, farms, and small business from eminent domain abuse and specifically prohibits Minnesota municipalities from using eminent domain to transfer property from one owner to another for private commercial development. Now, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But there were some problems with this law.
Right.
Okay? Problem number one. It was not retroactive. Between the summer of 2005, this law went into effect in July of 2006. So for 1 year, cities ran to and now Pawlenty wanted to make it retroactive and cancel that.
Right.
But they couldn't. But he couldn't get the legislature to go along.
Oh, surprise.
So projects still went forward despite this new law. So it was amazingly in a year, a bunch of projects got grandfathered. Isn't that kind of funny?
Yeah.
What grandfather of what? A toad? I mean, it was so that was flaw number one. Flaw number 2, these are kind of my personal arguments. They never really define the term blighted.
Right.
I still don't know what blighted means. It's kind of like I know it when I see it, but what is the standard to make something blighted?
Right, and when government knows it when they see it too, except that their definition
just depends
is
on your zip code.
Different. Yeah.
But I mean, blighted. I mean, is that vacancies? Is that buildings falling out of code? Is that what's the definition there? Closings. I mean, where do you define blighted? Just because it looks ugly?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's
plenty of government buildings that look ugly. Can we?
That's true too.
Take those and tear them down. I mean, I just think that if you have no standard, then you're back to it's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah,
and that's of course opens up the abuse. And I argue there's a third. They never really defined public use. I still don't understand what public use is. Is that a bike path? Is that a sidewalk? Yeah. Is that protecting trees? Is it protecting a stream and an endangered species? Is it? I mean, what exactly defines public use?
Right. Well, let's see if they have a definition.
You look that up, Jay, and I'm going to tell you a couple other flaws here. Well, it does require a couple things of blighted properties, but again, I still believe that this doesn't quite. You can read it, but it's legal gobbledygook. The original law also exempted many existing tax increment finance districts. Those exemptions lasted for 5 years. Now, they now have expired, but the Minnesota legislature carved out 2 new exemptions.
Oh.
One authorized Hennepin County to seize, this was the actual legislation, seize land to make way for Target Field. And the second deemed a new stadium for the Minnesota Vikings a public use and authorized the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority to condemn and acquire, which has no power to do that.
Right.
They had to authorize the Minnesota Sports Facilities Committee. They all of a sudden got eminent domain authority.
Yeah.
So again, what's the definition of a public use? Now, if you're going to tell me a sports stadium is public use, I should be able to go in there any way. Why are you charging me to get in there then?
Yeah.
You charge me for driving on a highway? Charge me for...
In some places they do.
I guess they do.
Yeah.
Hey, if that's a pub, that's owned by the
going
public,
downtown, yeah.
I ought to be going to the Vikings games for free.
Right.
Wouldn't want to, but... But you see where this is kind of gobbledygooked here. And if you're going to make an exception for the Twins and the Vikings, who are you going to make an exception for next? Well, because they bought off X amount of legislatures. Again, listen to the words of Justice O'Connor, Justice Thomas. What did they say? Who's going to benefit from this? The corporations and the people who have more influence over public officials than anybody else does.
Right.
That's exactly what's happened.
Yeah. Well, it seems like there's a lot of controversy around public use, and things aren't really clear anywhere. I mean,
That's what I'm saying. There's no...
There's supposed to be a distinction between public use and public purpose, but it's just created controversy from the sounds of it because nobody can truly define it.
See, and this, I'll tell you what's worrisome is, you know what's going to happen? This is going to end up in the courts.
Yeah.
And who knows what the courts are going to do? I mean, if the courts pass the Kelo, okay, I know the Supreme Court has a different makeup now, but I don't think this would ever pass the current Supreme Court. But state court, it could pass.
Yeah.
I mean, it could take years to fight something. How's a person supposed to fight? How's a middle-class person who owns their home supposed to fight all the way to the Supreme Court? There's no way they can.
Right.
That'd be hundreds of thousands of dollars to do.
Yeah. And the problem is, once the federal government or whoever states, okay, we want this land, it's going to become whatever, okay? We're going to build a new section here where there's light rail drop off and pick up, and a whole transit station kind of thing, and we're going to take land, and if they never do it, it's okay, and they'll never have to pay retribution on that. The courts will accept it whether or not. There was a case, Berman versus Parker, with the Hawaiian Housing Authority.
Really?
Yes. And it says, so long as public use redefined as public purpose is conceivable and possible, even if it never comes to pass, federal courts will accept it.
Oh, God, jeez.
Yeah. So theoretically, the government can go and take land and then say economy got bad or price of timber went up or whatever. It just didn't make sense to do it. There wasn't demand for it.
Well,
and then they could do whatever they really want to do with the land. That's a huge problem.
Wow, so government's not held to the same standard. Wow. By the way, I wanted to look and see if eminent domain. It is not easy to find this, by the way, if it was used for light rail or not. Here's an article from 2010, July 19th, 2010. Reporter is Bill Clements, and this is in the Daily Reporter. The Metropolitan Council is initiating. Met Council has eminent domain.
Oh, yes,
authority.
they do. Absolutely, they do.
The Metropolitan Council is initiating eminent domain proceedings on a second building in downtown St. Paul for construction of the Central Corridor, which is now in operation.
Right.
With all four people who ride it. The council has decided to use eminent domain to acquire the vacant Bremer Bank site and approved spending of an extra $360,000 doing traffic work on the campus of the University of Minnesota in anticipation of the $957 million 11-mile light rail connecting Minneapolis and St. Paul. Of course, $957 million, I would argue, was a fairly conservative estimate, and not conservative in a good way.
No.
In addition to the Bremer Bank, the Met Council has to buy 3 other parcels on that block, all of which are parking lots. Met Council spokesman Steve Dornfield said the council has estimated it will cost $7.8 million to acquire all the property, demolish it, and clear the site for the 3 additional parcels.
Yes.
So, yes, it definitely was used. So they were offering $360,000. The 2011 Ramsey County assessment of the property was $1.47 million. Well, no wonder the bank wasn't selling it to you.
Right.
Is that just compensation?
No.
I mean,
is it ever, though? I mean, they often will come in with the high bid, and it's still not market value, but it's the highest one you're going to get, because if you don't take it, they're just going to keep dropping that number, and then eventually they're just going to take it.
Well, and let's think about this. There's also the issue of getting around eminent domain. I mean, you want land. Okay, just pretend. You're government. You want land for something.
Yes.
Whatever it is. Where do you start? How do you start acquiring the land? Forget eminent domain a minute, but
right.
What do you start doing?
Well, you start socking away money so that you have enough for a down payment, and then you go to a bank and figure out how much you qualify for, right? And then
you target the land in your comprehensive plan. also.
Oh, so you're talking as a government, not
Yes.
as a. Okay, sorry.
Yes, what does government do?
Okay.
We want
Yes.
to expand. I'll just say a county road. Call it 81. How do we do?
That's very theoretical.
Very theoretical. What is the way that you start doing that?
Yeah, you have to make a plan. So in your comprehensive plan, you begin to make plans for different zones of the city, and you target something for redevelopment.
Then you use this thing.
Yes.
Your phone.
Right.
You call up Hennepin County.
Right.
You call up the Met Council.
Yep.
Hey guys, listen here. We got a plan to redo this. We need a little help.
Yeah.
We need a little intimidation. Might need a little money.
Mm-hmm.
You want X, Y, and Z to go through here. We need some help intimidating some people. Big bad government sends out feelers.
Yeah.
Finds a couple takers. Knocks on doors. Makes a couple threats.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what they say behind the scenes? You have no idea. Slowly starts to acquire.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing government has is all the time and money in the world.
Right.
They're not going to run out of time and your money.
Yep.
So they can wait you out. And if you're one of the last couple, they can find ways to force you out.
Mm-hmm.
Whether legal or illegal, make your life hell.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you're not using eminent domain. I use County Road 81 as an example because eminent domain was not used there. But you can't tell me residents there were not intimidated and
absolutely.
Quote unquote forced out of their homes. I would argue
not everybody wanted to go. I know that for a fact because I talked to those people personally. I can tell you firsthand that there were people along that route that did not want to sell, that did not want their homes torn up, that didn't want to have to move.
Sure, of course. Their
there were
kids
businesses.
Went to school and
they didn't want to start over.
But I wonder what happened. I wonder how they all get bought off. I mean, they just the price get jacked up to where they could. I mean, that's bribery if you really want to be honest about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I offered a mob boss enough money to do, it's kind of like, but it's backdoor eminent domain. They were forced to sell, even though eminent domain, quote, wasn't used.
Right.
But it was used.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they were going to go through with this project one way or another.
And you know what? I wonder what's going on with Southwest, with Gateway, with Botno. You can't tell me eminent domain's not being used.
Oh, absolutely, because they're going to have to tear out a bunch more stuff. I mean, you look at Southwest, like over in St. Louis Park, they have torn up so much of that area. And
and it will contribute to huge tax increases in St. Louis Park because
absolutely.
that land's coming off the tax rolls, meaning, of course, St. Louis Park wouldn't cut spending if their life depended on it. So now that cost is going to be dumped on everybody else because you just took a bunch of private property and made it public.
Yep.
Oh,
what a great,
what a country we live in.
Yeah.
Well, and, I still go back to it. Look, I mean, I know I've swung a little politically and into like some anti-corporate guy, and it is true to a point. I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in the greatness of self-determination, and I haven't changed my minds on those. But corporations, let me tell you something.
Corporations,
they and government deserve each other.
Well, it's because large corporations really have joined the ranks of fascism with the federal government.
They don't want a free market.
No, they work with the government. Yeah. They work with national,
NGOs.
They work with governments globally to overcome and to get around things, and they get special deals, and they get things that normal people can't get because they have the money and the power and the leverage to do it. And then, I remember that, I was always taught corporations are, business is good. Be pro-business because, that's where our market's driven from. That's capitalism. That's good. But it's no longer capitalism because it's being transformed into this Chinese model of pseudo-capitalism that's mixed with socialism and Marxism. And you create this weird fascist, like combination of business and government.
It's Mussolini running the trains on time.
Absolutely. So the government says something, hey, we can't do this legally, and they put it on the businesses, and the businesses go do it for the government, and then the businesses get special breaks on the back end, and the government and the businesses that won't play ball are put out of business. That is the way it works. And I'm sorry, that's not free market. That is not capitalism. That is government dictating who the winners and losers are by which companies are willing to join them and get into this weird fascist. It's funny because the word fascist gets thrown around a lot, and I think it's lost its meaning.
Nobody knows any definition of what that means.
It is the combination of government and business. That's what fascism is. You have communism where government owns the means of production. You have socialism where government controls the means of production. And then you have fascism, which government, I would say, influences the means of production, and there's a cooperation between the two.
Golly.
You can have a socialist.
Not too many isms I like,
situation, but but you're not fascist just because.
And you know what? Here's my answer too. And people have accused me of swinging to the left on this. Let me tell you something.
That's not it.
It is not left versus right. It is elites and people like that against the rest of us.
Yes.
They want us fighting each other.
Yep.
That's what they want. And you corporations out there, if you have the money, if you have millions of dollars to give to politicians to get special favors, you could pay a decent wage to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I'm not a believer in a living wage and that Green Party stuff. But don't tell me if you have millions of dollars, okay, to go influence politicians and send your lobbyists to Washington and St. Paul, that you don't have money to pay your employees.
Well, true story. I know.
Screw you, corporation.
I know somebody who works for Target. I'll leave it at that. Yeah. Target sent out an email to their employees boasting that first quarter, this would have been not this year, but 2022. First quarter, we made... I'm making up a number here, but like $10 billion in revenue. And then they sent out another email within a couple of weeks. Hey, we got to lay a bunch of you guys off or cut your hours.
I hate saying this too.
Yeah.
I worked for Best Buy for a long time, and I love the company. I love the people that I worked with.
Yeah.
And again, when I rip on companies, I'm not talking about the people who work at the stores and drive the trucks.
Right. You're talking about the make fat a living. Cats in the C-level suites.
Exactly. Yeah. People have to make a living, and I don't blame people for that. However, I recall in 2000, what the hell year was it? I started there right after 9/11. And when I ran for mayor, that year was the year that I left the company. 11 years I worked there.
Yeah.
And I remember we were the company of the year one year. We were the innovative blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And some of it was true. I worked there. And I worked in the projects division. I was on the cutting edge of new stuff. Mm-hmm. I was like one of the first guys to play with like an iPhone at Best Buy, and the first plasma TV I remember was $18,000.
Oh yeah.
So I remember that. We sold video VCR stuff when I started there. Just to put that in perspective, you Gen Zers out there. Okay. And the next March or April after that, I want to say it was 2004. I was in Chicago when I found this out working. That they took two departments and merged them.
Huh.
Because and quarter earnings were through the roof. And I don't mean to sound like Michael Moore here, but and I'm skinnier and better looking. But
Agreed.
Earnings were through the roof. Stock was very high. And then went bang, there were a bunch of job cuts. And I remember there was one bigwig that came to some opening that we had. He talked about, we just love you guys. You employees are so great, blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to take that guy out to the woodshed.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, pal. You go tell that to the X amount of people who just lost a job. Some people got 10% pay cuts. Don't tell me that we're that, but that's the kind of stuff corporations do it to themselves. It's and I was the same way you were, Jay. I was I was a laissez-faire guy that innovation and all that. Government kills that. Government kills anything. We would not have the assembly line if Henry Ford would have went to government with his hands out with something.
Right.
So it's a totally different mentality. And we are in that right now where it's, okay, I want to build solar panels. Let me run to my congressman, get a special tax credit.
Yeah.
And then solar panels never get better because you have no reason to make them better because the government's covering part of the cost of it.
If we got the government out of it, we might already have a hydrogen battery.
Yeah, no kidding. We've had the electric car for 50 years.
Yeah.
We've been subsidizing it. You think maybe if the government wasn't in there, it'd work by now?
Yeah.
The charge would last more than, West Broadway to 169?
It wouldn't start on fire by the time you drive down the block.
And here's the other thing. The things they need for batteries, we need mining for that. And who is stopping mining? We need the copper and all that for the batteries. And who's stopping it? The same people who are in favor of it. Now, okay, we're going off subject here, but it all ties together because getting around something like eminent domain requires business and government to be in bed together.
Yes.
How do we do this? How do we use our leverage to acquire this land for a joint purpose?
Yep.
And of course, it's the big corporations. It's not Bob's barber shop. It's not Jenny's nail place. It's not Sex World. It's the big corporations that are going to benefit from this. Look at who writes exceptions in Minnesota, the Twins and the Vikings. Oh, you think that's a coincidence?
Nope.
Yeah, I'd like to see where the poll ads cut their checks that election cycle. Like to see that.
Right.
But we all know where. They either went to a side group that can spend whatever they want to, or somebody's, what do you call it, super PAC or whatever. We all know that's where it went. So now, Jay, let's back up a second here. How do we fight this? Okay, how especially local governments, because local governments are under a lot of pressure, I think, from the usual.
Some of them go right along with it.
Most of them, I would argue, go right along with it. Some of them fight it. Some of them don't. But they're under a lot of pressure from the usual suspects.
Yeah.
League of Minnesota Cities, Met Council, it's Mado, state government, whatever county they're in. There's all these plans, Park District. Everybody's writing plans for your. I live in Maple Grove now, okay? And somebody somewhere in the offices in St. Paul is writing a new regional trail that goes through Maple Grove. Maybe they're going to extend. We'll extend light rail. We'll go west, through Maple Grove and Dayton and Rogers. Look how much that's going. We got to have light rail to Elk River now.
Yeah.
Somebody's plotting and planning. You might laugh, but it's true. Somebody's planning. That's in somebody's drawer.
Yeah.
So how does the little guy? And how does city council? Where do they start? How do they? The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a few steps, not a single step, a few. Yeah. So how do we? Where do you start fighting this?
Well, that's the thing. If you're just an individual who owns a home, you and your family have a home, you got no shot.
Yeah.
Really?
Strength in numbers.
You got no shot. The law really is not with you. Neither is the force. And so you got to start at the city level. I
am your father.
Yes. You got to have people elected to office that have a will to push back against this kind of thing. And so if you don't, and they may have a will. They also have to understand how city planning works, because chances are you're going to have a city planner that buys into this stuff, because this is how they're taught to get that degree in their liberal universities, is what they're taught by the American Planning Association. This is
I'm a member of that.
I'm sure you are.
I'm on that. I'm on that. Their steering committee. I'm on their steering
I
committee.
bet.
I'm the unsilent majority.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry.
Oh boy. So you gotta understand when you're getting into government that you're already up against people at the local level that you're going to want to trust in for information, because you don't know as much about planning as the city planner does, but you can't fully trust in that person because they already have a bent towards things like eminent domain, towards things like tearing down blight and redevelopment. So not that tearing down blight is always bad. I mean, it really depends on what it is and all that. You don't want a community full of crack houses or anything like that, but you got to take a look at what can you do as a city. Now, and we talked a little bit about this beforehand. Most cities in Minnesota are statutory cities. Most are statutory A. You have A and B. You have standard plan cities, which are small, and then you have home rule charter cities. Now, for a standard A and standard B tends to be a little bit larger city than like a standard A. It's not always that way. You will find some larger, like I believe New Hope is standard A. They're a city of about 23,000. That's pretty substantial. But
they're probably top 50 or 60 in the state. Probably.
Yeah. But you have a lot of standard. You have a ton of standard plan A. You have some standard plan B, statutory A, statutory B. You have some standard plan, which are your small, couple hundred people in a city. It's really a step up from a township as far as the way the government is put together, because you elect usually 3 to 5 people. You might have a treasurer and things like that. Anyways,
clerk.
Yeah. You don't. That's not pertinent here so much as just kind of understanding what they are. All statutory cities, including standard plan, you derive your powers from from Minnesota statutes. Statutory city.
State law.
So state law, what the legislators tell you can or can't do in the organization of, and
Jay,
yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but why are so many cities statutory? Because if I were a city,
yes.
I'd be like, the last thing I want to be is subject to. The state already tells me to do enough.
Right.
Last thing I want is my statutes. If they decide to change something, I have to change with them.
Yep.
That's the last thing I would want.
Absolutely.
Why is it that so many? You're talking probably 80% are some form of standard statutory. There's slight differences between them.
Yeah.
But why is it that so many of them are not charter cities? And we'll get into that in a sec. But
it's difficult. With a home rule charter city, you have to basically write a constitution for your city. So that's difficult, to figure all that out. It's just easier to have somebody else tell you how to do it, especially when you're a part-time politician that, has other employment. You're not a career politician.
Just let the city attorney deal with the details.
There's that, but also you have to take that home rule charter city and you have to go to the legislature and really get permission to become a home rule charter city. So there's an added step there.
Process.
And now I don't know, if the legislature would put the kibosh on that if too many cities started doing it, but I'd like to see what would happen.
I'd like to see
us test limits.
Well, and I also think that because you can't rely on a group like the League of Minnesota Cities, I would like to see cities band together and do this because, again, there's strength in numbers. If X amount of cities got together and decide, they do it individually,
right?
But if they all made steps toward it, because Constitution, and when we bring it back to eminent domain and how we fight this, one of the things you can do is go further with eminent domains in protection in a home rule charter.
Yeah. You can't do less than what the law is, but you can go over and above.
Right. You could lay out your definition of public use.
Yes.
Here are the circumstances in which eminent domain might be used.
Right.
Here are the
this is what blighted means
exactly.
in this city.
You can put that out. You can define that and enhance private property rights in your city. Enhance, the protections that people have. So it's not subject. It's not the eye of the beholder anymore. Right. And that is one thing you charter cities can do. I love crystals.
Yes.
One sentence in the eminent domain.
Yes.
Hey, we refer to state statutes or something like that.
Right.
That's what it is. It's like, come on. That's where you got to take it to the next level. You shouldn't have to. The state, to me, and this is where I have a catch-22, Jay, because while local control all sounds great, this is where I kind of go, the state really has a responsibility on this because my private property rights shouldn't change because I moved from Crystal to New Hope.
Right.
Yet they can. Mm-hmm. And to me, the Fifth Amendment is not negotiable based on my zip code.
No.
So as much as I'd love to see local government do this because they're our first line of defense, doesn't the state have an obligation to make sure everyone's private property rights are subject to the same standards? Like, in other words, if a soldier wants to quarantine in my living room, okay, it doesn't matter what city I live in Minnesota, they can't do that.
No. Third Amendment would say no soldier can quarter in
exactly.
your house. Yes.
If somebody's going to charge me twice for the same crime, it doesn't matter where I live.
Right. Double jeopardy.
Yeah, but when the Fifth Amendment is there, all of a sudden now it's subjective to a statute or a charter.
So is the second. So
that's
is
right.
the first.
The second, especially with carry, because that's up to sheriffs, isn't it? Right.
Yeah. Well, depending on the state law.
That's true.
Yes.
It's
some
changed
states
a little bit.
Yeah,
it depends.
Our state allows, for the sheriffs to make that determination. Although it's a shall carry state, so unless the sheriff has a very good reason to not issue it, he shall issue a permit. That is the way the Minnesota law works.
Yeah, I still think that's a little too subjective, but anyhow, just another reason to figure out who your sheriff is.
Right.
You're right. There are differences on other amendments too, and that's unfortunate. That just should never happen.
Mm-hmm. Try to get a permit in Chicago.
Well, the criminals all have the guns.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the criminals can get the guns, but the law-abiding citizens
they get
can't.
to open carry. We can't.
Isn't that great? Golly, that just stinks. I love Chicago.
Criminals get constitutional carry.
I know. I love Chicago so much, and it saddens me to. And I wish I could have been in New York like in the 50s. Now it's a dump, but I wish I could have been there. Now it's too bad. But again, my private property rights shouldn't change, and I think this is where I know that the legislature is too busy, protecting transvestite lesbians right now. But there's got to be a case to be made that these things need to be fined. I don't want the courts defining them. I don't want 4 lawyers in robes deciding my rights either. They're supposed to interpret law, not decide it.
Right.
So I don't want that either. So. I think this stuff needs to go a lot further. I don't think our laws are adequate, but that first line of defense is your city. And if enough cities do something, maybe the state gets off its rear end and changes.
Right.
And I would say something else. this is something that also is going to drive me. Why is everything a partisan issue? Why is protecting my private property rights some Democratic versus Republican thing?
But it's not, because I guarantee you there are plenty of Democrats that when they get their property rights violated, they're just as upset as a conservative is.
They are, but they don't. Their lawmakers aren't.
Right.
So, that's the difference. The citizens might be, but I don't know that the lawmakers are.
I don't know if all the Republicans are.
I don't think so. They didn't back in 2006.
Yeah.
I mean, when you read what Governor Pawlenty proposed and you see what was passed, although what was passed was still better than nothing, it was not. I mean, the Republicans had the House at that time. They could have passed Pawlenty's version. They didn't.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know what the opposition was. I really don't. I know some of it was based on local control, which, again, I think is absurd when you're talking about constitutional rights. That's me. Okay, so I don't know why. I think some Democrats did it just because Pawlenty was the one who proposed why we do that, but it's like, depends who the messenger is rather than the message. I mean, if you can't work together to stop somebody from getting their home taken from them, we're hopeless as a nation.
Yes.
Just sorry, but we are.
Yeah, and what you're saying here, I'm going to break it down a little bit more. When he's talking about local control, you have a certain set of principles that are put forth in the U.S. Constitution. Those cannot be violated. And especially talking about the Bill of Rights here, because the rest of the Constitution deals with how the federal government operates. When we're dealing with the Bill of Rights, there are certain things in there that cannot be violated. And in the 10th Amendment, it says everything not included in the Constitution is left to the states. Well, I'm sorry, things like eminent domain are covered in the Constitution. You cannot supplant that by passing your own laws and call it localism. You have to go with what the federal law is on that, and everything else is left to the states.
Yeah. And what you can do, though, like we talked about, is go further.
Yeah. You can strengthen it.
Yes.
You can.
I wonder.
Yes.
Could they do that with conceal and carry? Probably not, because it's subject to a sheriff. It would probably have to be at a county level. But they could.
I mean, that's our state law.
Yeah. I mean, just to protect people's Second Amendment rights. Could they? The sheriff can deny it for a good reason. Could they define good reason?
Well, I don't know that that's how the state statute is written.
Probably not.
Probably, they lay out some things like
they might,
a
but
felon or
Okay, but I think that's an automatic. I just think, things can be too subjective. I always went to this when everybody talked about everyone's quote unquote mental health.
Right.
Well, who's the arbiter of that?
Well, it's going to be the state, because they're going to be coming back to these red flag laws, and they're already discussing them in St. Paul.
Yeah, but I mean, if I'm depressed, because my hemorrhoids flared up, does that mean that I now forfeit my Second Amendment rights?
Could if you're on antidepressants, who knows what you're going to do when you're on those?
So make sure you don't take that Cialis. I'll tell you what, though. Here's the thing. And this is where you really got to be careful, because you could get denied for being on those things. Mm-hmm. You could get denied for refusing to go on those things.
That's true too.
I mean, say, look, I don't want to take pills for something. Well, then we can't trust. You're a danger to the community now.
Mentally stable.
That's right.
Yeah.
So again, where does it go from there? I mean,
and you can be reported by anybody, and they can
I'm
be
sure
lying
Walt
about you.
still has his hotline.
An ex-wife, tiff
employee you fired.
Yeah,
exactly. Anybody with a grudge. It would never hold up in a court of law, by the way.
Right.
You'd see through somebody. You have to have the evidence has to be corroborated.
Yes.
So I can't even say it.
Evidence.
Yeah.
Who needs that anymore? Jury or your peers.
And it just keeps doctors on my poop list. You're just on my poop list forever.
All you need is one crazy lady like down in Georgia with the Trump grand jury. Did you see that?
No.
Oh, you'll have to look that
Oh,
up.
jeez.
She's nuts.
Nuts in a good way or a bad way?
No. Well, I mean, it's funny if that's good.
Well, I'm all for a little, don't have Saturday Night Live to watch anymore. It's any good.
Here she is. Here she's supposed to be a jury member on and she's like, I'm going to be disappointed if he doesn't get convicted of something. It's like, how did you get on the jury?
Some legal incompetence going on.
So yeah, our legal system needs some help too.
It all needs help. I tell you what, maybe we need to require that everybody somehow is subject to something like that. You all have to be a jury. You have to do jury duty of some kind. Because my whole strategy, because I don't want to do it. So my whole strategy, if I ever got a summons, to go there and say, yeah, I'm racist. Yep, I'm sexist. Yep, I hate everybody. Screw you, blankety blank. That's what I do just to get out of it. So
I've done it twice.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
You've been on a jury.
Twice. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah. What were the cases?
I don't remember.
Can you talk about them?
I'm sure I could if I remembered them. One was in Duluth when I lived there. That's a long time ago. Then once when I lived down here. And I don't remember the first thing about it. It wasn't anything big. It was like, I don't know.
What, somebody stole somebody's family jewels?
Not even that.
Oh, okay. God, Jay, I had no idea.
It was, yeah.
Were you the foreperson?
No.
Were they guilty? Did you call them guilty?
I think the second time around for sure. I don't remember the first time very well at all. But yeah.
I don't know. I always find it a challenge to be a juror, which is why I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Which is funny because usually I'm always up for a challenge. But
yeah, I mean, I saw it as, it's kind of like John Adams during, the Revolutionary War when he defended the British soldiers because that's our law. Everybody should be, should be able to have representation and good representation, that will fight for them.
But he's innocent until proven guilty. You either believe that or you don't.
Everybody deserves a jury of their peers. And especially in these days, it's hard to get a jury of your peers.
Yeah,
everything's in the news. If you're conservative, everything's against you. If you're not, everything's for you.
See, and that's the thing. If I get there, are they going to search like my social media and search,
The lawyers probably will. They'll probably do.
They're going to listen to Spotify. I'll just say turn on Spotify. Yeah. I know what I think. It's pretty clear what I think. It's not.
Yeah.
I'll never get on. I wouldn't get on.
I don't know, but I do believe that, that we're constitutionally guaranteed a jury of our peers, and that's getting harder and harder to find. So, think twice about it. All of you out there who listen to us before you say no or you pull some sort of shenanigan to get out of it. You're really helping out whoever the innocent party is, and I know with our justice system and our county attorney, it seems like a sham, but if it actually gets to court, that's a good thing. The DA or the county attorney is going to get rid of the cases before they ever get to court.
Most of them.
The ones that actually get to court, you have a chance to kind of see justice done. So,
wow, you learn something new every day, Jay, that you actually did that.
Yeah, they actually trusted me with deciding somebody's fate.
So what was the questionnaire like? Do you remember,
I don't know if there was a questionnaire. You sit in the jury box, and the lawyers take turns asking you questions, and they can dismiss somebody.
There's certain automatic ones that they can just, hey, get this guy out of here.
Yeah.
But, what did they ask you?
I don't remember. It was probably 15 or more years ago last time I did it.
I would remember everything.
Yeah.
Everything they asked me because I remember every lie I told.
Yeah, I didn't. I just went in and
and they
Told them
picked
the way
you.
it
They
was.
let you be
Yeah.
on a jury.
Yeah.
That's freaking amazing.
Yeah. I know.
So
I know. That probably
gotta-
wouldn't happen today.
How do they still notify you by mail? I wonder if they still do
Probably.
that.
Yeah. Because I think if it has to be like an official summons
Yeah,
or
you
whatever.
have to have something written. Huh.
Uh-huh.
I've never gotten anything. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So
That's okay too.
I don't want to do it. I don't think work would pay me. I don't.
They have to.
Oh, they do?
They do.
No matter what?
Yeah. Although I don't know if they have to pay you 100% of your pay.
I don't
which
think
kinda
probably
stinks.
not. If
But-
I know corporations, they've written
Yeah.
a law, so they get to pay you 1/4
Right.
of something or whatever.
But they do have to pay you, and they have to allow you to do it. So they can't tell you can't do it unless there's an extenuating circumstance. And then
Well, and keep in mind, I mean, every court case is not the Simpson case. They don't all go on
Right.
for a year.
no, this one went on for a day.
Oh, okay, that was it.
That was it.
Huh.
One day.
Then you went and said guilty, and then it was gone. What was it like though to decide someone's guilt? I just
You gotta approach it. There are people who are just willing to throw stuff around. Guilty. Without you got to be able to empathize with both parties and say, all right, well, if this guy's guilty, what does that mean for this guy? What does that mean for this guy? If he's innocent, what does that mean for this guy? What does that mean for this guy? Because you're affecting two people's lives,
at least.
in a very real way, and you have to approach it very somberly. Is that a word?
yeah. I mean, I just wonder, these people who served on these high profiles. That's what I would never want to do.
Oh.
Is be on a high profile jury. Pick your case, and I don't want to be on it.
Be stuck in that for
Months, exactly.
Yeah. Oh.
Sequestered. I mean,
Well, I know, they didn't sequester the Kyle Rittenhouse jury.
no, they didn't. But everybody knew. Everybody knows who's there.
Yeah.
Their relatives know. Their bosses know.
Yeah.
And today, there's no way to keep anything quiet.
No.
So,
No, and those jury members were getting threats.
of course they were.
Yeah. Do you remember? Was it that one, or was it in the George Floyd case where the jury was getting followed by the media? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
I think
don't
it was
remember.
that one.
I think it was Floyd. I don't think it was Rittenhouse.
Oh, was it? Was it Floyd?
I could be wrong on that.
It might be and they.
That was
Yeah.
Rittenhouse.
Yeah, their journalist was following the jury bus.
God, I mean, unbelievable.
Idiots. Yeah.
Why don't they do that in the
stop at
Epstein
anything.
case? Do that to Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
Do that to the lab in Wuhan.
Yeah.
And no journalist to be found.
Right. Exactly. Oh, goodness.
All right. Well, Jay,
Yeah.
another sizzling episode.
Of course.
We were pretty funny in that episode. We had some good points almost.
Almost.
Style and profiling. Jet flying, limousine riding, wheeling, dealing, son of a gun. Jay, give us some final thoughts, please.
Thanks, Andrew. I will. Yeah, almost made the show bearable for once. What do you mean? All right. Well, the Declaration of Independence, in its first draft, said that there are three things that our Creator gives to us that cannot be taken away: life, liberty, and property. Now, that was rewritten into pursuit of happiness because too many people from the slaveholding states were going to use that as an excuse to keep slaves. And I won't go into that history lesson, but there was a whole bunch more that Thomas Jefferson actually wrote that was abolitionist in nature in the early drafts of that document. But as usual, the people of ill intent get in the way. And in order to try and make something good, can't become the enemy of the perfect, But we have had this right to property enshrined in our country since before its inception, where if you own something, it's yours. You know, throughout our history, as people ventured west from the easternmost colonies and the states to come into these new territories, you had the Homestead Act, where our government actually encouraged people to go out and take ownership of land and to populate this country from east to west. But now we have a government that's trying to take the land back. They're going up and they're buying up land. You have places like Blackstone that are going up and buying up houses, buying up property, and forcing people into renting situations. You are coming into a time, whereas the World Economic Forum bragged, you'll own nothing and be happy. Well, I'm not happy. I was raised on ownership. I was raised that it was a good thing. Once something is yours, nobody can take that away from you. And if they do, they've got to pay a recompense for that. They have to make good on how they harmed you. That's the way the American justice system is supposed to work. But too many times now, there is not justice. Government gets what they want. Big business gets what they want, all at the cost of the person. 3 jobs, keep their kids in shoes and clothes, and keep food on the table, and save up for college and retirement. But you know what? We are not going to back down. There's enough of us left that remember the way this country is supposed to be, that you can own something and it's yours, and the government has no right to take it away. All we need to do is stand fast and not give it up, even when it looks lucrative. When we have these energy companies coming in with the power of the government, and they're making all these deals because of the subsidies to be able to buy farmers' land and put up fields full of solar panels and windmills, and cut down on our food production, and developers come in and buy farmers' land. And if it's a developer just buying land, that's amazing. That's, a farmer should be able to do with his land as he pleases. But however, if the government's getting involved, there is a problem. If there's government money going to one party to be able to buy the leverage needed to take land away from somebody else, where he wouldn't normally sell that unless the government was involved, there's a problem. We need to get government out of our business, whether that's real estate, whether that is actual business like corporations, whether that is entrepreneurship, whether that is the way that we handle education. Yeah, I know we got public education, we got non-public education, but it's hampered because government gets in the way. So how do we fix this? Cities have to buck up. Cities have to get strong. Cities cannot be friends with county government, state government, federal government. No, they have to see it as an adversarial relationship where sometimes there are ways that they can be helped, and other times you stay away because I know what you're bringing and I don't want any part of it. So where are those people? Those people who look at government and they don't trust them, who are willing to stand with a backbone and say, no, I don't trust you. It's not going to happen that way. I'm holding on to my property. I am holding on to my set of beliefs, and I'm not going to start calling a man a woman and a woman a man just because you say I have to. I am not going to go along to get along when I know it's a lie. We have to start speaking the truth. And we have to, yes, speak the truth in love, but we have to stand, even when it means that we stand alone. When we retreat, when we back off, that's when the enemy comes in. That's anytime you leave a vacuum, it will get filled. What is it getting filled with? Make sure you fill that vacuum. Make sure you fill that space. Don't you allow somebody else to come along and do something that is going to hamper your freedom. There's not a whole lot of freedom left. We are still probably the freest country on earth, but I'll tell you what, we have lost so much. But it's not too late. It's not too late because we still have the freedom to run for office, get elected, change the laws. And until we don't have that ability anymore, whether through cheating, whether through just bad people, bad decisions, we have a shot. So we need some people who are willing to sacrifice. People who have the pioneer spirit and are willing to blaze a trail. You know, our forefathers, like I said before, they started in the east and they marched west in the hopes that they were going to be able to claim a little land for themselves. Maybe find some gold, some silver. Tell you, our gold, our silver, is the freedom that we have, the freedom we can have, and not to be bullied by other forms of government, but to actually live a free and quiet life, peaceful, and not being railroaded. So who's with us? Who's willing to stand? Who's willing to sacrifice? Who is willing to be that pioneer? You want to run for office? You want to start a blog or a podcast? You want to get involved somehow? Get a hold of us. COMMsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's COMMsolutionsmn@gmail.com because we want you. And that's not just some cheap slogan so that we can get you into the army and take your taxes. No, that is the only way that we win, when we come together in unity. It's time. And we're counting on you. We love you, Minnesota. But now it's your turn to get to work.